Winter Training 2011. Crystallization-Study of the Psalms. Part 2. Message 6. The Highest Revelation of Christ. Day 3. Outline. C. In order to cooperate with Christ's heavenly ministry, in the day of his warfare, we need to have an absolute and thorough consecration to the Lord of our whole being, with everything that we have, for the accomplishment of his eternal economy. The fullness of one's experience of life depends on the fullness of one's experience of consecration. 1. The basis of consecration is God's purchase. 2. The motive of consecration is God's love. 3. The meaning of consecration is to be a sacrifice. 4. The purpose of consecration is to let God work in us, so that we might work for God. 5. The result of consecration is to abandon our future. D. In order to cooperate with Christ's heavenly ministry in the day of his warfare, we need to rise up early in the morning to contact the Lord, so that we may enter into the womb of the dawn, to be conceived as the dew for Christ's watering. E. In order to cooperate with Christ's heavenly ministry in the day of his warfare, we need to live a life of the altar and the tent, keeping ourselves empty, open, fresh, living, and young with the Lord for his new move. 1. We need to be emptied and unloaded in our spirit, in the depth of our being, so that we may receive Christ as the reality of the kingdom of the heavens. Morning Nourishment. Genesis 12:7 and 8. And Jehovah appeared to Abram and said, To your seed I will give this land. There he built an altar to Jehovah, who had appeared to him. And he proceeded from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, and there he built an altar to Jehovah, and called upon the name of Jehovah. Concerning the experience of consecration, there are 5 main points. The basis of consecration, the motive of consecration, the meaning of consecration, the purpose of consecration, and the result of consecration. Consecration is not just a knowing of the right of ownership in the mind, or a feeling of love in our affections, nor is it only an attitude, an expression of ours toward God. Actually speaking, consecration itself is a major part of life. The experience of consecration, therefore, is really the experience of life. The fullness of one's experience of life depends on the fullness of one's experience of consecration. Hence, if one pursues the experience of consecration, it will enable him to grow in life. Today's reading. Since consecration is a part of life, then by following this life and living in this life, the law of life will cause the 5 points of consecration to be clearly and spontaneously worked out in us. When we first consecrate ourselves, our experience is similar to an embryo in the mother's womb. One cannot distinguish the ear, the eye, the mouth, and the nose. As we grow in life, however, these 5 points related to the experience of consecration gradually become formed in us. Then we really have a feeling that we have been bought by God, and that all our rights are in his hand. We become a prisoner of his love, because his love has pierced our hearts. We become a sacrifice indeed, laid on the altar, for God's enjoyment and satisfaction. We will be those who have been thoroughly worked over by God, and are then able to work for him. Our future will truly be as a handful of ashes. All our ways of escape outside of God's will shall have been cut off. God only will be our future and our way. At that time, the experience of our consecration will indeed have become matured. The life of a Christian is the life of the altar and the tent. The altar is toward God, while the tent is toward the world. In his presence, God requires that his children have an altar, and on the earth, that they have a tent. God appeared to Abraham, and Abraham built an altar. This altar was not for a sin offering, but for a burnt offering. A sin offering is for redemption, while a burnt offering is an offering of ourselves to God. The altar here does not refer to the Lord Jesus' vicarious death for us. It refers to the consecration of ourselves to God. It was the kind of altar spoken of in Romans 12:1. I exhort you therefore, brothers, through the compassions of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, well-pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. An altar is for worshiping God, by offering all that we are and have, to God for His purpose. Abraham's building of an altar was motivated by God's reappearing, and can be considered an anti-testimony to the building of the Tower of Babel. Abraham first built an altar for the worship of God. Then he pitched a tent for his living. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob each lived in a tent. Their dwelling in tents was a declaration that they were strangers and sojourners on the earth, who were seeking a better country, and eagerly waiting for the city, which has the foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Both the better country and the city, which has the foundations, are the New Jerusalem. To be poor in spirit is not only to be humble, but also to be emptied in our spirit, in the depth of our being, not holding on to the old things of the old dispensation, but unloaded to receive the new things, the things of the kingdom of the heavens. This is the end of Day 3 of Message 6.